one of the most important things the buyers of these carbon credits want to make sure of, risk is a big thing and it's real to them, and they need to take that in consideration, is that by being in this certification program, be it FSC or SFI, these forests will be managed sustainably, period.
Right.
Okay, because we're going to follow those standards, and that just gives the potential buyers a little more peace of mind, a little more security, and they're willing to pay a little bit more for that. So that's a good thing.
Welcome to Forest Matters, a podcast about sustainable forest management, forest carbon development, and the opportunities available to landowners through global carbon markets. Forest Matters is brought to you by NativState, the leading forest carbon development company for small private landowners. Welcome everyone back to the Forest Matters podcast. We have been going through a series of episodes and conversations about sustainable forestry and sustainable forest certification programs. And once again today we have NativState Vice President of Forestry, Tim White, with us. Hello, Tim.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So we're going to get into some record keeping and audit requirements and all of that in a minute. But for anyone who hasn't seen our earlier episodes or wants a reminder, walk us back through exactly what FSC is to start.
Okay, so FSC is the Forest Stewardship Council. It is a global certification program that certifies forest land. And what does it certify? It certifies that it is the forests are being managed in a sustainable way, related to not just the trees, but the trees and the wildlife and the biodiversity and the communities that are involved, the social impacts of that forest, all the things that global partners wish to see in a certification. It's a little different than the SFI, which is Sustainable Forestry Initiative, which is a U.S.-based certification. Very similar, but still a little bit different. It is the only globally accepted certification program, is FSC.
All right. And as a part of being enrolled in FSC, there are documentation and record keeping requirements that are a part of that.
Yes.
Help us understand a little bit about why that's such a foundational requirement to FSC.
Well, as I told somebody last week, I've been managing timber, forest, whatever, for 45 years or so. And I think I'm doing it sustainably because they're still around. But the difference is it's not documented. It is what did you do, when did you do it, who did it, and why did they do it. So documentation just is just proof that you followed a sustainable path. You used a certified logger. You used someone who has been trained in appropriate logging practices. You've used a certified applicator when it came to herbicides. These people are trained not just in what they do, but in all the laws and regulations around their job, their application, whatever that may be. But it's real critical just to make sure that every role and responsibility is clearly identified, and that's kind of what that does.
And we've touched on this earlier, but let's touch on it now. Why is that so important, given the global market and the nature of where this?
I guess they just don't trust us for some reason. I don't know. No, I'm kind of kidding. It's important because if I want to pick up a cup that's got the FSC stamp on it, and if it's documented, I can follow that cup all the way back to the forest from whence it came.
Right.
If everything's documented, who harvested it, when was it harvested, on whose land was it harvested, what mill harvested it, what process, all the chain of custody is what it's called, can be followed back. If that's not documented, it kind of leaves some gaps, okay? And the fact that we say, oh, we did it, don't worry about it. I know we're good people and we shoot straight, but it's just a way of making sure, because one of the strengths of a certification program is the audit process. Okay. Right. And it's hard to audit on my opinion or my word. They need to see, here's the harvest plan, here's the harvest check, here's the applicator process that we went through when we applied that herbicide. All that stuff has to be in place for them to be able to audit and go, yep, you're following the standard.
Well, and I think it's you said something interesting when you talked about the chain of custody for the cup that might be in your hand. If you think about our business in the forest carbon world, that applies to the carbon credits that we generate as well, correct?
Exactly. So one of the most important things the buyers of these carbon credits want to make sure of. Risk is a big thing, and it's real to them, and they need to take that in consideration, is that by being in this certification program, be it FSC or SFI, these forests will be managed sustainably, period. Right. Okay, because we're going to follow those standards. And that just gives the potential buyers a little more peace of mind, a little more security, and they're willing to pay a little bit more for that. Right. So that's a good thing.
Right. Well, let's get into the record keeping. So when you're working with landowners, which kinds of records or which activities tend to be the most challenging to keep up with or keep track of as you get into it? Or one harder than another?
All the above. So landowners, by nature, they're independent landowners. They don't, a lot of times, I say a lot of times, they don't plan like maybe they should. For example, hey, I want to go spray my food plots with some glyphosate or Roundup, or I want to go spray my road edges or something like that. I think I'll do that this weekend. Well, okay. Not that you can't spray stuff. It's better to say, okay, let's think about what you're going to spray, how much you're going to spray, what you're going to use, the rate you're going to use, and who's going to apply it. Is it applied by a certified applicator? It's a big thing in FSC. Why does that matter? Can't just John Doe spray that? Yeah, he could, but if he's not certified and he makes a mistake, then what? Right. Certification comes close to guaranteeing that they're going to follow the laws, the regulations, the application, the old read and follow label directions that you always hear about. That'll be done if you use a certified applicator.
So how do forest managers or work with landowners to track those activities like harvesting or road building and chemical use and those types of activities?
There's a vast amount of paperwork. For example, probably the first thing to think about, or one of the first things, is a contract. Is who's going to do the work and what kind of work are they going to do? The old saying, fences make good neighbors.
Right.
Well, contracts make for good transactions. It's not that, you can do the work without a contract, but if something ever goes wrong, you're kind of out on a limb. So the contract should spell out who's doing what, for how much, for how long, under what standards or what specifications. And it can get fairly detailed sometimes, especially with a harvest contract. That's where I see a lot of landowners that want to harvest timber. They call their brother-in-law or their uncle or somebody they know in the business and say, hey, come cut my 40 acres. Fine. Well, and then as a consultant forester, I used to always get the call after the job was done, and they say, how come he didn't do this, or how come he didn't do that, or why is this that way? Well, let me see your contract. Right. Well, it's a half a page. John Doe said, I will cut this for this price. Yeah. And that's not a contract. Right. So that's the one thing I see a lot of that landowners should be really conscious of, is having a good contract that spells out exactly who's doing what.
So when you're working with landowners, and yes, I mean, it can kind of can feel somewhat onerous about the documentation requirements in FSC, but what are some of the misconceptions about how that really works and how we help them manage things?
The biggest one is, I can't spray any herbicide if I'm in FSC. That's not true. You absolutely can. Now, there's within all the vast amounts of FSC documentation, there are a few herbicides that are strictly forbidden, like strychnine. Well, probably a good reason. So believe it or not, I was learning from a guy last week. He said one of his forest management clients, they use strychnine to control moles. They have or groundhogs or something like that. And they had to write that out of their management, so they had to adopt a different way to manage, because strychnine is strictly forbidden for a lot of reasons. It's very hazardous to humans, for one thing. Right. So there are some herbicides, insecticides, pesticides that FSC says, no, not at all. But the normal practice of forestry, the typical herbicides you would use in a normal forestry practice are absolutely okay to use, provided that you document, like I said, when's it applied, how much is applied, where's it applied, who's applying it, all the basic who, what, where, when, why, and how type things. Right. And jot all that down. We can help with that. We've got logs and records and ways that you can do that, so that when audit time comes, we can say, yeah, here it is right here, and here's what they did.
Well, that's a good segue. So let's talk about FSC audits for a second. How do those come about, and how often do those occur, and sort of what's required in an audit?
So the answer to how often is yearly. A sample, not all the participants in a group are audited every year, but a sample of those participants are audited every year. It's up to the group manager, whoever that might be, to work with their certification body, another outfit that they have hired to help with the group, to determine what needs to be audited. Typically, if a new parcel is put in that year, a fairly large parcel, it will automatically get audited. For example, we had some in one of our projects in Louisiana. We just got put in the group, and lo and behold, a month later, I get hey, we're going to have an audit. Oh, okay, great. So there's an auditor, a third party, not related to NativState or the group or whatever. They come and they go down through the standards and all the objectives and say, okay, did you do this? Did you do this? And we supply them with maps and acreages and management plans and all the background information. And they go look on the ground. They actually look on the ground and says, okay, what'd they do here? Or did they do anything here? That kind of thing.
Right.
And that's what it encompasses an audit. And the more parcels you have, the sample gets bigger. Okay. So fortunately, we only had one that was sampled because we only had a few in that group. But yeah, happens every year.
Okay, so let's get to the why behind all this, because there's been a whole lot of like what we do and what goes into it and all of that. But really, how does really good FSC record keeping and enrollment in FSC overall help improve confidence in carbon credits and the overall permanence and durability of the credits we produce?
So the why, there's really two things about the why. Number one is it is good practice. It is good practice. It's not something that's extraneous, something that's just, I know when you first look at it, you think, oh, why do I have to keep all these records, all this kind of stuff. But it's good practice to do that. And there are a certain type or level of carbon credit buyer that absolutely requires, I guess is the best way, that this certification be in place. Why? Like I said earlier, it gives them a less of a risky possibility of something happening to this forest. It gives them a little more security. It is because we are selling credits on a global stage now. We're selling them all around the world. It gives them, okay, this standard is accepted across the world. So we know if they meet this standard, oh, okay, that's probably a good thing. So it generates a good type of carbon buyer, and they do pay a little more money for that credit because it is of that certification. Right. So that's important to the landowner. Okay, right. And yes, you're going to have to keep a few records. Yeah, you will. But we can help in 99% of the cases. We can help with that.
Well, let's talk about that. What kind of support does your team and NativState provide as a part of FSC enrollment and record keeping and audits?
Okay, so we keep up with. Our job is to keep up with all the activity that happens on all our participants' lands. The best way that can happen is if we have good communication between our landowners. I tell people that all you have to remember with FSC is 3 words: plan, communicate, and document. If you can just remember those 3 things, then our job will be fairly easy. We've got 2 dedicated registered foresters that do nothing but certifications and working with landowners. We just hired 2 great guys that they've been with us a couple of months now, and they've got the combined 40 years experience in the business. So they've been around the woods, and they know what to look at, and they've been exposed to FSC and SFI as well. So we will have people there that you can call on. And like I said, the best thing you can do is think ahead, call us and say, hey, I was thinking about maybe doing a harvest or maybe doing something great. I had a strange thing. I had a call this morning. Guys wanting to plant some trees, not even related to SFI or FSC, but he just picked up the phone and called me out of the blue, which was good. I'm tickled about giving some advice and some guidance on how he needed to do that. So that's the main thing, is just communicate with us. Even if you're not sure, we would love for you to call us.
Well, so you kind of answered my concluding question, which was going to be, what's the one thing a landowner needs to make sure they do? Let's see. Let's go over it again. Plan,
communicate, and document. Okay. We'll take care of a lot of the documenting because we have to gather all that information for 600 or 700 landowners in all of our projects. So we're going to have a system. We do have a system to keep up with. Okay, so and so's pre-harvest form, and so's post-harvest form, and so's chemical application form, and all that. We already have that, but just to know, hey, especially a lot of the landowners have received a forest management plan for us, and they probably looked at it and go, "Wow, that's a lot." I understand. But when you start dissecting that, it's stand by stand. We've got a recommendation. What should you do? Well, this thing says TSI. What is that? Love to explain what timber stand improvement is and how you could accomplish that. And I began last week qualifying a list of contractors that can do this type of work. They have to be, once again, with FSC. We have to certify that they have insurance and they're properly trained and all those things. So we have to do that with these contractors. And we're not going to recommend a contractor that's not passed the certification that we have to have. So that's another thing that I've been working on. And we'll have a pretty good list in Arkansas, Louisiana especially, of guys and gals that can do this type of work.
Right. So it's just important for landowners to remember we're here to support you. And that's enrolling with us means the whole forest management.
Yes.
The whole organization's here to make sure that everything's done correctly.
Correct.
Because that's how we benefit.
Yes.
All right. Well, Tim, thanks so much for your time, and look forward to talking to you again.
Well, thank you.
All right. Forest Matters is brought to you by NativState, the leading forest carbon development company for small private landowners. Learn more at nativestate.com.